you are new, my name is Heidi, and I am the writer and creator of ABC Jesus Loves Me, which is a preschool curriculum website that is free for families and then is available for churches, preschools, and other businesses to use with a license. And in the past few Periscopes, we've been talking about parenting. Specifically, what has God called us as parents to do? And I showed you in the last two Periscopes the line of parenting. And this shows a child who goes from infant to adult stage. And then it shows that at infant stage, God has called us, has commanded us, and because we love our children, He has called us to be the child's 100% authority, 100% decision making, and we're 100% responsible for that child. As the child grows, that is tapering off as the child is making more decisions on their own. But the ultimate goal is for that child, when he or she becomes an adult, that they are loving God and that they are loving others. And we get that basis for love from 1 Corinthians 13, that a child is patient, that a child is kind, that a child does not envy, does not boast, is not proud, does not insist on its own way, and etc. And so our parenting is all driven by our goal for that child to love God and love others. And so today what we want to talk about is the child to have self-control. Because when you look back at that 1 Corinthians 13, a child who has self-control is patient. A child who has self-control is not insisting on his own way. The child who has self-control is not easily angered, and we could go through more and more of these. So last week, we talked about first-time obedience, where I said, little man, come to mommy. Then little man said, yes, ma'am, I am coming, and he runs to me. And that's that first-time obedience that we talked about. Now we're going to go to the next level, and that's where we're teaching the child self-control. Now, you can call it whatever you want. When you are working on a child to come to you to have self-control, I tell my child to lock it up. And where that comes from is when little man took Taekwondo. His instructor would say, lock it up, and the children knew exactly what to do. When I taught school, I would clap a rhythm. I would go, and then the children would answer back with that exact same clap. And they knew as soon as they heard that clap, they knew what to do and that I was going to give them instructions. In Sound of Music, Captain Von Trapp blows a whistle. And it's the same concept. Those children knew what to do when they heard those certain whistle calls. Now you can use whatever method that you want to. I'm going to go ahead and use lock it up because that is the one we use in our home to describe this and to teach our children to have self-control. And this can be used for ages, I don't know, probably 2 all the way up to almost probably preteen. We use it in our home for all 4 of our children. And it's just a way for them to get self-control and to listen for instruction. It's also excellent for children with ADHD, as my one son in particular has, because it is giving him purpose and giving him a specific thing to do when his body just wants to move constantly. So let's dive in here. Okay, so when I tell my child to come here, to come to mommy, and he answers, yes, ma'am, I am coming, and runs to me, I will say, lock it up. And there are 5 things that he does to lock it up. First of all, his legs are crisscross applesauce. Second of all, his back is tall. He's not slouching. Third, hands are on his knees. Fourth, his mouth is closed. And fifth, his eyes are on the adult. They're on me. So, crisscross applesauce, the legs are in control. They're not kicking or moving. The back is tall, and that's showing respect and showing that we're listening. Hands are on our knees, and the reason why I do hands on the knees is because then the child can't play with anything. You can also have a child fold their hands, but what I find oftentimes is that the hands are still moving even though they're folded, and when they're on their knees, they're in a specific place and it's harder to move them. The mouth is closed. That's where also the self-control comes in, is the child is ready to listen and hear what the adult has to say. And then the eyes on the adult is again saying, I want to do this or I'm going to be paying attention to the adults. Okay, so let me explain how I set this up, and then we'll talk about why we use it and practical ways to use it. So just like we did the first time obedience, we're going to set up a game. So on a day where you can devote to training, so not a day where you're having a lot of phone calls or you're having to leave and run errands, on a day that you're going to be home and can devote to training, you want to cover the rules and explain how this is just another way to help your child show respect, love for mommy, and how you're helping that child get self-control. So we're going to tie it with what we already did with Come to Mommy. So this is an example of what I would say. I would sit my child down and I would say, you know that when mommy says come to mommy, you are to immediately come. And you've been doing a great job at that. Today we're going to learn the next step. When mommy says lock it up, you are going to crisscross your legs, put your hands on your knees, close your mouth, sit up tall, and put your eyes on mommy. And today we're going to practice. So whenever I say lock it up and you do it, I'm going to give you a sticker. And every time you obey, when I say come to mommy and then lock it up, you will receive 2 stickers. And as soon as you receive 10 stickers, we're going to pick out a book. Mommy's going to immediately stop whatever she's doing, and we're going to go read a book together. So that's a way just to make it into a game and make it exciting for the child. You could also simply give high fives. You could give an M&M, whatever motivates your child to do this. Like I've said, lock it up is showing self-control because the child is showing that they can get their body as well as their mouth, as well as their eyes, which affects their ears, all into control. One of the things that you can do, we talked last week in the first time obedience video, is that you can have fun with it and play a game. So sometimes at the beginning, I would have him lock it up and then I'd say, okay, get your wiggles out. And he would wiggle all over the place and then I would say, lock it up. And we'd see how fast could he lock it up. So again, we're playing that game. We're going over the top and having a lot of fun with it. Another point from last week. If you decide to do this with your child, you have to be consistent with it. Otherwise, the child realizes that what you say and what you follow through with doesn't match. So you want to be consistent and you want to follow through with every point. All the way from the eyes down to the legs are sitting locked up in control. You don't want to allow the child to only do a couple of the points of lockup. So let's say the child is sitting crisscross, but his hands are playing with a toy. That would not be given a sticker because the child has not done the entire set, showing respect and listening for what you have to tell them. So consistency and follow through on all 4 points is key to everything that we talk about. Then if the child does not do what you ask them to do, as far as come to mommy or lock it up, then you would have a consequence. And there were a lot of questions after last week's Periscope on what is a realistic consequence. And it obviously depends upon the child's age. When you're dealing with a toddler, for most of our consequences, I simply removed the child from the situation and placed them in a pack and play or in the crib, and then allowed them to come back. For an older child, timeout in a specific place is a great place to is a great consequence. If they're not setting a toy down when you have called for them, then that toy needs to go into timeout. For a child who is needing sensory input, let's say they have sensory processing disorder or ADHD, a consequence that allows them to get sensory input. I talked about last week again, jumping on the trampoline for 7 minutes is an excellent one, and one that we use a lot to help the child gain control. Remember that as you play this game, the rewards are going to taper off until it becomes consistent in your home and wherever you are. And that's one of the great things about the first time obedience, as well as the self-control or lock it up, is that the child can do this in any situation. If you are at a grocery store or if you're at somebody else's home, the child knows what to do. Okay, why is this important? Well, first of all, we talked about it's important because God has commanded us to do this, to train our children and to discipline our children. Also, it says in the Bible that we discipline those we love, just like God does. Another thing is we're teaching the child self-control because they are having to learn no matter what they are doing, they must immediately freeze, put their ears on and their eyes focused, and they're also showing respect to the adult. Again, I said that you can use this anywhere. When little man is having trouble staying in control, he is kicking or his mouth is moving too much, he's talking too much, I will say in the van, lock it up. And in his car seat, he can go ahead and lock up those legs, put his hands together and get control. One more thing just for those kiddos with sensory processing and ADHD, you can have them push their hands together, and that is giving them a sensory input, and that's another idea if they are struggling to get that control. So that's just a little side point there. Another reason why this is important is showing respect. As I said, they are learning that there is a time for them to talk, there's a time for them to play. There is also a time to listen for instruction, and there isn't a time for an adult to talk, and they need to show respect during that. Again, this is an aspect of obedience. You are telling them what to do, and you are expecting them to obey. And last, you're teaching the child to have a teachable spirit. And the older our kids get, the more importance I realize that teachable spirit is. For that child to realize that they need to trust the adult, that the adult is listening to God to know how to train and discipline that child. And sitting in a lockup position is having a teachable spirit because they're showing that they're ready to learn and to listen. I will say in a grocery store, I have used this with my child. A lot of times, little man sits inside the big basket at Walmart when we are there. That helps him. And so he can lock it up when he's sitting in the basket if his hands aren't doing what they're supposed to do. Or you can find a back corner of a grocery store that you can go to. Go to those aisles that aren't used as much and have the child sit right there. And just a few minutes, if you have established the boundaries and the foundation at home, and I shouldn't say a few minutes, just a few seconds of locking it up in a place outside of the home should greatly help the child, because they know that this is something that you are serious about because you've been serious about it at home. Let me explain it with a situation in our home. Each Saturday and Sunday morning, I will call a family meeting and I will say, everybody to the kitchen, lock it up. And so the kids will come, lock it up. We will discuss what's happening that day, also what needs to be finished, what needs to be done. And we just have a little family meeting discussing the happenings of the weekend. And so the kids will stay locked up while I am talking. And then when I'm finished, then they can ask questions. And because we have 4 kids and they don't always like to take turns talking, I have them raise their hands so I can call on them. So we are showing respect to each other. In teaching a child, let me back up. So in the actual laying the foundation of this game that you're starting at the beginning, I would have the child go sit locked up for just a few seconds, long enough for you to see they have done those 5 points. They're crisscross applesauce, their back is tall, their hands are on their knees, their mouth is closed, their eyes are on the adult. Once you see that they have that stance for just a few seconds, 5 seconds, then they can go back to doing whatever you want them to do. They can go back to playing. Or what you can do is give them if they have a chore, or if you're going to talk to them about something that's going to happen that day, you can explain that. And as long as they sit in that same position, then they can go about doing whatever you want them to do or to play. With the rewards tapering off, typically I try to start something new like this in a game on days that I know I can be home. So let's say we do it on a Thursday and a Friday because we don't have anywhere to go. We can really focus on it. And by Saturday, honestly, I'm starting to forget about the rewards. The child's starting to forget about the rewards, and hopefully it's becoming a habit because we have had fun with it at the beginning and we have done it a lot those first 2 days. So you're looking at about 2 days of game, and then you start tapering it off from there. Showed you different ways to get the child's attention to know that you want them to come to you. One is to say lock it up, another one is to clap a rhythm, another one is to say 1, 2, and the child says eyes on you. I wouldn't suggest it, but Captain Von Trapp did the whistle. Those are just all ways to get the child's attention. I've heard moms also say, instead of lock up, they say, show me self-control, which I love that because that's literally what they're doing. Anytime that little man is having trouble at a meal, I can say, show me self-control. And on his dining room table chair, he can lock up his legs, he's very limber, and he can put his hands together and he can get in self-control mode. So that's another thing to say instead of lock it up is show me self-control. So let's run through that really fast. So I would say, little man, come to mommy. He would say, yes, ma'am, I am coming, or yes, mommy, I am coming, and then he would run to me. At that point, I know I have something to tell him, that I want to have his full attention. And so I would say, lock it up. Or I would say, show me self-control. Or you can come up with anything that you want to use in your family. You just want to keep it consistent so the child knows exactly what you are saying.